Welcome everyone to this episode of ICMA's Education and Training and Let's Talk Markets. Today we're going to be talking about investing for retirement. I'm Emma and I'm with
Georgina, Uwaifo.
Let's start perhaps about talking why this is such an important topic for our demographic and perhaps maybe why it isn't raised enough in our age group.
I think most people are thinking about more immediate goals. So if I think about my friends and my social circle, they're thinking about buying a house and saving up maybe like for a wedding. Those are like the two more immediate financial priorities. I think retirement feels really far away. So if they're thinking about what I need to save towards, it's more that than retirement.
Definitely things like student loans as well will be at the forefront of people's minds. And perhaps when they think about saving, they think about it in relation or investing in relation to those sorts of issues or concerns, and not so much the idea of a pension, which could be quite far removed from their immediate priorities.
Yeah, and I think there's not a connection to the fact that your pension is also your income. So it will be your income at least, like in the future. So it feels like a very far away goal. So I think that's why most people, and well, at least in my age group, in our age group, don't really talk about it or think about it as much.
Exactly, and perhaps maybe there are some ways in which we can sort of help address that gap in knowledge in sort of our demographic consciousness, raising it more in education perhaps, or even online tools, for example.
Yeah, I think starting early in school is always going to be useful. The earlier you can get it into people's collective memories, the better. But I think even adults need ways to be reminded that, you know, they need to save for their pensions, or that they might have to consider how much they've put away and how much they've still got to, and what they want to live on in the future, because we will probably live for a very long time now. If you were thinking of ways to embed it into more everyday life, it would be maybe when you start a new job, like having some kind of mandatory training that tells you about how much you can contribute, maybe how much your employer will match, what that might be invested in, what the process is, if there's any tax efficiencies, and what that means for you. So I feel like that would be like a very easy way, because you'd start a new job and you have all sorts of onboarding, for example. That's just, one idea.
Yeah, exactly, and it's sort of one of the main times that it becomes sort of within the consciousness of a lot of people is when they start a new job or change roles.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that there's a lot of discussions around things like pay, like employee and pay, company contribution and auto-enrollment and that sort of thing. So like you were saying, for example, when it goes out of your bank account before you realise, a lot of people are not subconsciously investing for their pension but not actually consciously aware of the contributions that are being made or how in fact they are being made, which are two quite important things that may go beyond sort of the general level of understanding of how investing in your pension works.
I mean, there's probably pros and cons to the fact that it's an automatic process, at least here in the UK, that people don't pay a lot of attention to. It might be a good thing, I think, for me anyway, because if you don't give me the money, then I can't spend the money. But it also could be holding you back from making active decisions about like where you want your money to go, if you want it invested in a particular way. So, I suppose there's pros and cons to that process, but I think ultimately it's beneficial that people become investors without even having to exert themselves too much, so to speak.
Obviously, and that is also only one way to begin learning about the process through, for example, companies, when for a lot of people they may have to have done their own research or they may not even know where to begin as well. So I think that, for example, looking at increasing education and conversation around it is a really important thing, especially for younger people, because the earlier you start, the better, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. know about you, but when I think about like certain other countries, like maybe the US, for example, I feel like so many people there talk about their 401k. And it's like a part of the culture, so to speak. And I think that makes it a lot easier for people to understand that this is an important thing and that it's something you should prioritise.
And there's definitely increasing awareness within the younger generation, along with things like online platforms. So being able to access and sort of see your savings, your investments through those online platforms that they are maybe more sort of used to using is definitely a good sort of mechanism for younger people to get involved and to start being more actively aware of what contributions they are making to their pensions.
I will say, I think where I have spoken to friends and family about investing, it's like if they have a stocks and shares ISA, that sort of thing, and maybe they're using a robo-advisor to invest a bit of their savings, but I don't think they're using it for their like a personal pension product, for example. Definitely not, because I don't know, it's just I think maybe there's enough to think about. There's like saving in cash maybe, and then investing, and then you're like thinking about all the actual things that you're paying for in everyday life.
And it can seem like quite a lot of pressure, really, because the dialogue around your retirement and the sort of age at the moment can seem like it's quite a lot of pressure and a burden to start thinking about what sort of goal you should be setting, or where you should even begin to think about what sort of amount you might need. So when looking at peers and sort of thinking about it, it's such an individual thing, but it's also something that is so deeply personal, but commonly sort of cared for and worried about at the same time. So with that, I think comes a lot of apprehension, let's say, for example. And setting a goal is obviously a very sort of important thing to consider when you're looking at investing in your pension. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think I have a specific one, but I do think I should probably get one and get a better idea. Like I acknowledge that it's a bit difficult, only because you're talking about investing, at least in my case, for like 40 years into the future or 50 years into the future, and I don't know if there will be a state pension still, or like how generous or restrictive that will be based like compared to now. And I also don't know like if the economic situation in 40 or 50 years will be similar to now. So will it be a high interest rate environment? Will it be lower? Exactly. You know, I think in general though, because of all those unknowns, I would err on the side of caution and saving more, because then you're always in a better position anyway. And you're more likely to be able to, you know, balance and fare against like whatever economic situation or financial personal situation you're in then. So that's where I'd lean towards.
The goalpost might keep moving, for example, especially in line with your ability to contribute, your income, things like that. So in that sense, a saving goal should never be set in stone or something that you necessarily adhere to forever, for example. But I think thinking about the question and even like the conversation around the goal is something that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you start thinking about, oh, I'll just contribute to my pension. Weighing it up, whether it's enough, whether it should be more, whether it should be less, is something that comes as like a second level conversation to that original, oh, I'll start thinking about it level, which is possibly where our demographic starts to lose their sort of commitment in that sense.
I think the focus really, if I had a magic wand, it would be just the awareness piece, having people understand that it's an important thing to think about. And then as a secondary point to your point, thinking about allocation, investment goals, etc. I think as long as people are even aware that they need to be putting money in, or at least that they should be, then that would be my first thought. One thing I noticed when we were preparing for this conversation is that it made me start to think about my own retirement more. And actually, when I was on my way here, I logged into my own workplace pension and I was able to see, what's in there and my allocation, things like that, which I typically don't. So I will say, at least, I'm glad that this conversation has switched my mind onto it. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely the level of depth with which I would consider it as well has increased. So obviously we spoke about when you join a company and when you first enter into a company pension, for example, that's when it becomes on your radar. And for me, that was the case. So looking now, I'm definitely thinking about it in more depth and with probably a more sort of purposeful approach to considering things like how it actually operates, how it's working, what I'm in, those sorts of things. So I think it's just taking it up that level to sort of really understanding it in more depth and what it means for me too. And also, like you say, logging in and checking more is actually a massive thing that probably I now realise I could have been doing more.
Yeah, it's actually not that hard. So yeah.
What about you?
I would say the same. I think I'm glad that it's a helpful nudge to help me think about it more. So hopefully I can share the love with others.
So thank you so much for coming, Georgina, and thank you everyone for listening today.